Outlet Liquor is your place to buy a case. Stock up and save when you shop the lowest prices available every day at Outlet Liquor. You never have to wait for a sale. The more you buy, the more you save. Only at Outlet Liquor.
What's your outlet?
Folks, welcome back to the show where our wires do get crossed, but our swords always are. It is a Sabres game night. These Sabres are down in the Panhandle to take down, hopefully, to take on the Tampa Bay Lightning. And we've got a podcast to catch up on the past week's worth of action, as well as get ready for that action tonight. Of course, any action you're looking for this weekend, make sure you make it happen at the place to buy a case, Outlet Liquor. And speaking of action, we got a full panel. We got Gatesy. We got intern Vinny. Gentlemen, it's a Sabres game night, and I'll start off by saying after what happened on Monday, couldn't come soon enough.
Yeah, I think that Toronto game just left a sour taste in everyone's mouth, and if you even open up Twitter, it is pandemonium on Sabres Twitter right now. It seems like the season's already over, and the ups and downs, like I think a couple months ago in November, we were in must-win games in November, and we're doing okay right now. We faced a Toronto team that was hot, that came out swinging in a game that, they kind of had to win as well to kind of prove that they're where they are in the NHL. And it's an 82-game season for a reason. The Sabres aren't going to go undefeated the rest of the stretch. Tonight's going to be a big test against another good team.
Yeah, Sabres Twitter was a rough place to be. And again, sports Twitter, and I think we've said this even early in the season, is when you're looking at hockey, it's a long season, right? And people have a tendency, especially when the Bills are playing, to immediately overreact to losses. With that said, it is getting late in the season. I think we could use the excuse and sort of calm people down for a while and say, it's all right, like there's still 50 games left. There's still half the season. Now you're getting to a point where there is almost less than 30 games left. So you're 5/8 of the way through the season. And yes, some of these games are must wins, whereas games in November aren't necessarily. So I'm going to say now, a lot of these games become even more important than we liked to pretend those games back in the fall were.
Listen, and people always go to me, intern Vinny, he's handsome. He knows everything he's talking about. But then sometimes he drops a 5/8, and I'm like, yeah, we need to keep him an intern for a little bit longer because those numbers were going completely the wrong way for the Sabres on Monday. It was very interesting because I think the attitude going into that Monday game, and obviously we'll, talk the overall team in a second, but it was kind of like we got the games in hand. Like, here's like a little, frisky matchup with Toronto. Like, let's see where we kind of line up. We took care of them last year for the most part. And I think it was a back to reality moment for Sabres. I think we were all riding high. They were on a kind of had a little success out in the West Coast, despite, struggling against good teams like the Hurricanes at home recently. Again, bringing it all together here, I think it was a reality check for sure for this team, and it's very interesting to see where we'll go from here. And starting off, obviously, tonight in Tampa Bay, at Tampa Bay, arguably no tougher place to play in the NHL right now, and I think that's pretty much a fact, given the fact I think they're 14-1 in their last 15 games at home, and it's pretty clear-cut, guys. Obviously, it's like you said, intern V, we got about 26, 27 games left here. And there's no, terrible opponents on the schedule, except for Columbus at the end and maybe, a matchup with the Flyers or something tossed in there. But besides that, you're playing all contenders, and these guys are going to be playing for playoff positioning down the stretch, Gatesy.
Yeah, I think one thing Sabres fans have really noticed is this team takes advantage of maybe teams below them in the standings. And this team has I think some nights they have a high ceiling and a low floor. And I think against the Leafs, really saw that low floor come into play against a really good team. And I think everyone's really has high expectations for the Sabres squad. Here, this team's got to make the playoffs. It's their chance to finally break the drought. But this is the time of the year where things are going to get tough for a young team They're going to face some teams that have been there, done that. If you look at the teams above the Sabres in that wild card chase, they're veteran teams. You got Crosby and the Penguins, Ovi and the Caps, the Islanders who've been on a couple runs the past few years. These are teams with experience. And the reason there's a reason the Sabres team is an outside chance for a wild card spot. That's not guaranteed. They got to put things together, and if they can go at some sort of run against these really good teams, I think we can it's set in stone that the squads can make a run in the playoffs. But right now, it's getting through the stretch without collapsing. I think it'll be huge.
Yeah, this is a really, really important time. It's tough because the schedule is so difficult. I'm going to reference a tweet that was pretty popular on Twitter just a couple days ago. This was posted, I believe, the 23rd. This was posted 2 days ago on Tuesday. This is from Aaron at 23Sabres on Twitter. And he said, the Sabres' remaining schedule is incredible. Only 4 out of the remaining 28 games, it's actually 5, but he corrects that immediately, are against teams currently under 500. Philly twice, Columbus twice, and they play Montreal, who is currently below 500 as well. So that's 5 other games. Philly has a 483 winning percentage. Columbus is a 360 winning percentage right now. They have 12 games where they're playing against a current top 6 team in the NHL, not just the East, a top 6 team in the NHL. That's the Rangers 3 times, the Devils twice, the Lightning twice, which we're going to see tonight, Boston twice, Carolina twice, including the game 2 nights ago, and then Carolina again. So, I mean, they have really a gauntlet of games coming up, and that's really tough, especially because this is a time where the Sabres could really let this get away from them here. I mean, we've seen so many years where they've 2 years in a row, they won long stretches, 10-game win streak, 8-game win streak, and then they collapsed and finished in the bottom 10th not bottom 10th, but in the bottom 10 teams of the league. And this is a season where you have a tough schedule, and it seems like it'd be very easy to do that again. And we've seen how streaky the Sabres team is, but I mean, Gatesy, when you look at how the schedule is made up, it's very possible, but you really can't afford to lose 5, 6 in a row here, even though the teams you're playing against, could warrant it.
Yeah, and I think one thing we do have to keep in mind is Sabres are playing really good teams at the end of the stretch here. These are playoff games in terms of the overall feeling and what goes behind them. And just because, say, things don't work out, the Sabres play all these wildcard teams so many times down the stretch, like really anything is possible for this team. Anything can come back, just like Maniac here. And I think just realizing that these games down the stretch are so important because they're a good team.
Oh, no. Am I frozen here? Oh, I thought it was me for a second. I don't know what's going on. We need to get this team back on the same page. We need to get my internet. It's just like UPL. It decides to play for 5 minutes, and then it's taking the rest of the night off. I mean, I cannot have this. We need to get back on the same page, and let's do it with a great quote from our guy Paul Hamilton the other day. And this is an interesting one because in one sense, it seems like, yeah, no shit. Like, obviously, they're better than shooting the puck. But you start out the game the other night, you go 10 minutes without a shot. Toronto just absolutely blasting you in your own zone. Do you think there's maybe a shred of truth to the way that this team has an attitude toward games, the way they attack the offensive zone, and maybe that this quote has a little bit of sentiment to it, Gatesy and Vinny?
Yeah, I think I said it before the pregame show on that game against the Leafs that the Sabres can't afford to try and trade chances with the Leafs because they're just going to get killed. I think they really tried to do that night, and it just didn't pay off. The Leafs defense really just swarmed the puck. Their forwards got back quick. They played hard on their own end. And I think the Sabres were a little lax. I mean, they're definitely very lax in the defensive end. Couldn't get bailed out. Just got out-muscled every time. And I think they do find success, obviously, when they shoot the puck and get some sort of offense sustained. Because I think that, I don't know the numbers, but I felt like they had so many turnovers entering the Toronto end. Get turned over, come right back the other way, nice out-of-man rush, and they'd find the back of the net. It seemed like every time.
Yeah, that was one of the most frustrating things about watching that game was it was not necessarily the Sabres, and I've seen a lot of people say this on Twitter, like, oh, the Maple Leafs figured out, and a lot of people overreacted with this alone, right, is the Sabres got figured out. Everybody knows what Granato's system is, and he's not able to adjust. Now, one thing I will say is, like, sure, the past couple of games, I'll reference the Flames game specifically. Sabres come out, I wouldn't say hot. I mean, they had 3 shots on goal and 2 of them went in. So they're leading 2-0 after the first 20. After the first period, they come back. The Flames come back, score 4 goals in the second, and then the third period was terrible. And so the Sabres, maybe not a second period team. In the Toronto game, they came out slow. We're down 4-0. Ended up, technically, once Craig Anderson was in the net, they won that mini game, which doesn't mean anything. But I mean,
that was a big narrative that I was pushing on Monday night. We won the Anderson game.
Right. So, but with that said, it's not necessarily that the Sabres got figured out. I think they were just playing bad hockey. And I'm now bringing this all back to Gates's point. One of the most aggravating things they were doing is doing way too much at the opponent's blue line. They would get to Toronto's zone and immediately turn it over. They weren't making smart plays. And one of the most aggravating things in hockey as a coach, and one of the worst things to do in hockey in general, turnovers at your opponent's blue line is the second worst place to make a turnover on the ice, aside from literally right in front of your own net. So it's just, you're committing one of the cardinal sins of hockey fundamentals just on a repeated basis. And Tage did it, Skinner did it, Cousins did it, Jack Quinn did it. I think if you go into their turnover numbers, which I don't have in front of me, all of them have to be credited with at least 1 turnover at the Toronto blue line in the first period alone, because they'd get there, try to do too much, and then it would be a turnover, because Toronto is a good – I mean, we love to make fun of the Maple Leafs because they can't win in the playoffs, but they're a good team. If you put this team on paper, if you sim their – I don't know if NHL 23 has like a Maple Leaf stink in the playoffs like bug, but if you sim them, they probably make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, maybe 6 out of every 10 simulations, because of how talented their team is on paper and on the ice. I mean, that's not a bad team. And when you make those mistakes, it's going to cost you. It did 4 times in the first 20 minutes of that game the other day.
Yeah, and what costs him, I mean, listen, he's my guy. He is him when he's on. But my goodness, UPL, asleep? I don't know what the word is, but some of the angles he was taking on those goals, I mean, they were terrible.
Yeah.
That's plain and simple. So with that said, that the angles and that has shifted a little bit on this. Talked a couple weeks ago, I think a lot of us came out to, it was UPL 2/3 of the time. And then I think we even leaned maybe Comrie over Anderson. Where I'm at with my refreshed kind of platoon idea, I still am a UP guy. I'm not going to jump off my UP bandwagon yet. I want to up the Anderson. Yes, I do want Comrie. This is where I want Comrie. Exactly like tonight. I want him against the hardest teams and the worst teams. So I'm thinking about him for like the Columbus matchup, and I'm thinking about him for this game. Then I want Anderson playing everybody who are the fringes below that. I want him playing like the next 10% as far as quality goes, and then the bottom 10% as quality goes. So that's your 20% at each, right? And then in that middle 60, I still want UP. So maybe 50. Maybe you put Anderson at 25%, something like that. But that's where I'm at. What about you boys?
Yeah, that makes sense. I still think you have to run UPL. I see so much stuff online of going with experience over, the guy right now. And
the key phrase was experience versus experiment. Like, people were saying he should have played versus Toronto. No, I want UPL in that game. When we have a game that we need to win, I want UPL in right now.
It doesn't matter if you have Dominic Hasek in that game. The Sabres were going to lose no matter who was in the crease. If you look at the goal, people were so angry about the goals UPL let in. The last one, I'll give it to you. Not great. But the other, 3 before that, just guys getting beat to coverage, no one back checking. The one goal is a 2-on-3 in front of the Sabres net. They get outworked. They have an extra guy. Puck ends up in the back of the net. You see these things that might look like they're the goalie's fault, but it's only because they have lackluster defensive play and guys not working hard in their own end. And they get that, it's a totally different game, because, yeah, you might want them to save some of those pucks, but they shouldn't be happening in the first place. It's not up to him to save everything and do everything for this team. He's, 23 years old? Give the guy a break, because he needs a team in front of him to make saves as well. It's not just up to him to keep the score below 3 every night.
Before you chime in, IV, I defer to the charts. I don't always believe them, but I defer to that there is some semblance of reason and analytic. Obviously there is, quantitative data that they're using. I think UPL has played better for the most part than his numbers indicate overall. I would say that, and that's not me being biased. I think when he needs, like when this Sabres team needs a big save after a turnover, for the most part, he gets one. That's been happening in the last month or two. And I feel like he gives that team that boost. They reiterate that. I feel like he gives them more confidence than those numbers portray. What do you got, IB?
Yeah, I mean, I will say I'm gonna use a phrase that is a little bit negative. So looking back at the Toronto game, right? You've got 4 goals scored on you in the first period. The first 2 are, I'm gonna say, less than 1% UPL's fault. The first play is just a good hockey play. Toronto drives the puck wide, draws the defense in. O'Reilly comes in as a third guy, gets into the slot, one-timer into the net. Really, that's just, I mean, Toronto's going to score goals. Buffalo, like, I can criticize Buffalo's defense, every day of the week and twice on Sundays. But the reality of the fact is that when you're looking at that play specifically, that's just a good hockey play. Teams are going to score that play. We might score that play against Tampa Bay tonight, and they have a good defense. So I'm not really worried about the first goal or the second goal for that matter. Yeah, you'd like your defense to pick up O'Reilly. I mean, he kind of squeaks in between the D. You'd like them to close that gap a little bit. Not worried about that. Third goal, I'm going to place like 50% of the blame on him because the puck was loose and he couldn't track it through.
He didn't adjust. He got flat. He got flat and like in a spot.
And that's going to be the crux of this argument is going to be I understand he's 23, and I understand he has very little experience in the NHL, and I understand he's played pretty well all year long. And I'm just going to get a little selfish when I say your goalie's job your goaltender's job is to tend to the goal, and I think you need him to bail you out a little bit. You just need him to bail you out. Now, again, I'm not expecting him to be Vasilevsky. I'm not expecting him to be Carter Hart, who was really, really good a couple of years ago. I'm not expecting him to be Ottinger. I just need him to bail you out from time to time. He didn't do that against the Maple Leafs. That's fine. So I'm not really on the ship of getting him out of the net, twice as much as we expected him to. He's just, a guy that has an experience, and you would have liked a couple of saves there because you saw the Sabres offense can get you back in the game. It was just too little too late. But yeah, I think the concern I would have is, as much as I like Anderson, I think he's solid. I think there could be another situation of next week, the Sabres play Florida obviously on Friday, then they play the Capitals on Monday. Let's say Craig starts the game against the Capitals and we lose 5-2.
I think they play the Capitals on Sunday.
That's what I meant. Yes, I didn't mean Monday. Yep. Okay. Thank you for correcting me on that. But so let's say Craig starts Sunday and he lets up 5 or 4 and then gets yanked. I mean, we could be having a conversation of Craig's too old, he should retire. We want to see Comrie more. And then we might be having the same conversation next Wednesday about how Comrie played well on Tuesday night and we should see him 40% of the time. And then all of our arguments are tying back together of the immediate gratification of every loss is the end of the world and every win, that means our goalie's the best. I think just like all of the factors need to be taken into account. So my general point is I don't want to overreact to the game on Monday, but I'll maybe take I'll take what would be 2 games away from UPL, maybe give them to Anderson, just in the sense that, maybe you need somebody that's a little bit more steady. But again, I might be making a different point next week.
Okay. Well, hey, that's how this Sabres team has been. They've been so streaky. They've been week to week. You might be saying one thing in the beginning of, at the end of February. You might be saying another thing at the beginning of March. Speaking of which, it is time for these Sabres. Actually, not quite yet. Next week, Friday. Let's get into it real quick. We actually had an awesome article from our guy Hayek, Scoob, on our trainwrecksports.com, talking about a couple of the options. So again, there's 3 schools of thought. Nothing at all, little move like Darcy Regier status, and then big splash with a couple of candidates there. Let's go, each of you. Give me your preference, and then give me your preference first, and then what your ultimate prediction, what you think will happen. Next Friday on the trade deadline.
Yeah, I think my preference would be to bring in some sort of defensive help. I would love that help to be someone that can really stay longer than the end of the year, another year, and a guy that might make an impact. I think there's so many depth defensemen that you can plug into this team, and it's not Jacob Bryson, but is it really going to move the needle for the Sabres? I don't think so. But my preference, you have so many prospects, so many picks, and not all these guys can play in the NHL and can get there. And even when you draft a guy, you don't know he's going to make it to the NHL. You have so many guys out there can get on this team now and play well. It's just whether or not the Sabres want to give up the capital for it. I just see Kevin this deadline just taking it pretty easy, though. I think it's going to be kind of a quiet move for the Sabres. If it's anything, it might be something small, maybe on the back end. I think people's dream of grabbing Timo Meier, Jacob Chychrun is a long shot, and I think that'd be something fun, something great. I would love Chychrun on the back end, but at the end of the day, I don't know how feasible it is for the Sabres to part ways with these prospects right now. I would really like it, but I guess we'll find out what Kevin does.
Yeah, I'm going to agree and say I don't think they're going to do anything really spectacular, which is a shame because you do want to capitalize on, I'll call it momentum that your team has generated this year alone. Now, again, maybe if we drop the next 3 games, if we lose tonight and tomorrow and then Monday and Tuesday, I think, coming into next Thursday night, I think I'm probably sitting there going, I don't need a trade before the deadline. Like we've lost all of our games in hand. We've basically lost them. Now we're not really in it. Now I don't really want to do anything splashy. But if we can go out and win 3 of 4 or even, get what would be the equivalent of like 5 points, I think I want a splash move. My dream scenario is Jacob Chychrun. I think that would be so helpful because it's a long-term thing. He'd be here for more than 1 year. It's not just a rental. This is not a team that's in a position to want rentals yet. There's no reason we should be going out and getting somebody that's like a free agent in July because that's again, we're not making a cup push. We're making just a get in the playoffs push. And there's not a guarantee that one individual is going to get us there. I think Chychrun, while he might not get us to the playoffs this year, certainly will help and then could also help us get there next year and the year after that. The price for him right now, I'm looking at Joe Marino's tweet at Joe Marino TCB on Twitter. He said, he's quote tweeting a tweet from Andy Strickland that says, the cost for Chychrun remains any combination of 2 first-round picks or a first and a prospect that would likely equal a first. To me, I'm going to do that all day long. I'll send them a first-round pick in 2023 or 2024. We have 6 picks in the first 2 rounds. And if I can send you a first round, personally, I don't really want to give up Savoy and I don't want to give up Kulich. I'm not a fan of Ostlund, so selfishly, if we can send any one of our first-round picks, I'm sending Noah Ostlund and I'm sending a first-round pick down the road. And if I can, I'll throw in a 4th-round pick if it makes the deal happen and brings Jacob Chychrun to the Buffalo Sabres. I really, really want to see him play with one of either, Owen Power or, I guess, Henry Jokiharju, if that, depending on how the pairings work out and what Granato's thoughts are.
And, there's only a few teams where I guess it would be contrary, but the Sabres need a player that can contribute the next 3 years, not a player that can contribute 3 years from now. Even though they've worked to be in that position where they have these draft picks, they have these prospects and riches, they really need that one guy right now.
Right. I'll just add quickly that you have so many picks over the next few years and all these players in your prospect pool. You have forwards that are playing in Russia right now that are going to be NHL ready. Just sort of that's how the Russians work, is they're just a little bit more physical than the Swedes are, which is great. You have
the Russians is like playing basketball abroad instead of going to college. You get ready a couple years earlier.
Right. So, and that's all well and good. We have prospects and we're going to have more prospects. There might be a chance that we draft somebody next year that's ready to go in the NHL right away. But I mean, the reality of the situation is, and I know I'm not the first guy that said this, we have so many prospects. There's no way, even if they're all NHL talents, that all of them are going to play for the Sabres. Let's say Noah Ostlund goes to Phoenix and is a 24 goal a year scorer. That's a real shame because we traded him away. But also, guess what? We didn't know that, and we got somebody that actually is going to help us in Jacob Chychrun. I'm willing to take that chance because there's a chance that Ostlund doesn't develop right away. Maybe we trade him for a 2nd-round pick 4 years from now, and then he goes and has a Tage Thompson development. There's no way of telling because prospects in the NHL are so different than in any other sport. I want something that's going to help us the next 3 years.
Makes sense. Sorry, folks. Had a little cough there. Speaking of which, let's hope the Sabres aren't confident up the puck early against Tampa Bay, or that could be trouble as they get ready for action against the Lightning tonight in Tampa Bay. But first, a quick word from our sponsor, Outlet Liquor.
Outlet Liquor is your place to buy a case. Stock up and save when you shop the lowest prices available every day at Outlet Liquor. You never have to wait for a sale. The more you buy, the more you save. Only at Outlet Liquor.
What's your outlet?
All right, folks, we are into the pregame show here. Folks, Crossing Swords pregame show. Sabres at Lightning, brought to you by Outlet Liquor. Gents, tall task right now. But with that said, pretty crazy considering, again, I will fact check this while you guys are talking. Pretty sure that Tampa Bay is 14-1 in their last 15 at home. Sabres only plus 190 on the money line after that embarrassing performance the other night. Interesting?
Yeah, I just feel like the vibes on this stretch just aren't great. I don't know if that's just a me thing right now, but it's going to be a tall order for the Sabres team that's like the rest of the year and playing these great teams. And I don't know if I'm ready to see this team play another game like Monday night against the Leafs. Just something about that put, I think I talked about earlier, sour taste in my mouth, and I'm afraid of what's to come. But the fact that they finished that third period the way they did proves that they can play with the big boys when they're there for a full 60 and play the right way. So hopefully they learn from that game against the Leafs, realize that they can hang with these guys and put on a show against Tampa, because I think if this team wants to make a run, they're going to have to win these games against teams that are better on paper. They're not going to do it just by getting by, beating teams they should beat, and, maybe win here or there against a good team. They got to really rack up these wins against these Tampas, against, these other teams that are above them in the standings, because they got to make a run at this time of the year.
Yeah, I think it's going to be even more important. Tonight is obviously hugely important. Again, just being a game, in the East against a team that's really good coming off of a big loss. But the game on Friday night might be even more important against the Panthers, because that's a team you are actively competing against to get into the playoffs and get a playoff spot. So I don't know, that line might reflect that the Sabres are a better team on the road for whatever reason. I mean, that's a weird stat that I know we've mentioned a couple of times. The Sabres, for some reason, love playing in other teams' barns, and they don't love playing in the KeyBank Center. I know they don't, not like, if you ask the players, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, we hate playing at home. But like, in all seriousness, like, for whatever reason, they just seem to play better on the road. And that line might reflect that. Even so, like you said, Tampa Bay is a good team, a great team even. And I feel like they're maybe giving the Sabres a little bit too much credit. So I have a feeling the public is going to be on the Lightning side tonight.
Yeah. So the question becomes, how do you attack Tampa in Tampa? I just did the fact check. 14-0-1 in their last 15 at home. My goodness, is this team tough to play in? Amalie Arena, I believe the pronunciation is. So with that said, again, you're both Don Granato. You're a handsome guy. You're down in Florida for the night. How are you attacking this Tampa Bay Lightning squad after what happened on Monday, especially?
I think you just have to realize that, while this team's young and inconsistent, when they're hot and play the game they're supposed to play, and they're a good team. You saw that in the third period against Toronto. That's a win again with Craig Anderson. He was in net. It's tough when you play these really skillful teams to not try to run and gun with them and prove that you're the more skillful team, because the Sabres aren't. You look at that lineup, yeah, they have some good players. They have some young guys that are going to get to that level someday. But right now, February 23rd, it's just not it right now. They have to realize that there's more than just tonight. Play a game that's going to get them the win, not just, what Vinny talked about earlier, of turning the puck over at the blue line, trying to, do something that the other team's doing to you. This was this game's 59 on the year, something like that. And I think they can't realize that there's a way you can play at the NHL level against good teams. And I think they should probably do that tonight.
Yeah, I think you probably have to do the opposite of what you've done against all the other good teams you've played over the last 10 games, which is outshoot them in the first period. Even if they're low quality shots, I think you just need to put pucks on net. There is something special about going out on the ice with the goal of, hey, let's get the first shot on net. Let's be the first team to 5 shots on net. We want to get to 10 before the period ends. You can talk about the mathematics of hockey. If you average 10 shots on goal a period, you're going to average 3 goals a game typically. And that's just sort of the way the cookie crumbles at times. So when you look at those numbers, you can't be getting outshot 14-5 in the first period because you're not going to win hockey games like that, especially against really good teams. So with that said, it sounds like, like AA 16U travel hockey to come out of locker room and be like, all right, guys, I want to get the first body check, win the opening faceoff, and get the first shot on goal against these guys and build off of that little momentum. But I think you might need to take on that mentality against a good team like this. My key to this game, outshoot them in the first period and get back to your ways of putting pucks on net, because some of those shots are going to be at 97 miles an hour coming off the stick of Rasmus Dahlin and Tage Thompson, and they might find the back of the net and give you the lead early.
And let's face it, this team is better when they're shooting the puck. We know that for a fact. So with that said, here on the Outlet Liquor pregame show, I hope I'm not frozen for everyone on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, MySpace. Are the Sabres going to be frozen in Tampa Bay tonight? What are your gentlemen's predictions?
I think just internally, I don't know. The vibes just seem off in my head about this game. But this team just keeps surprising me week in and week out. Whenever I think, this is it. This is where it goes downhill. They shock me and play a great game. And I think tonight could be one of those games. I think Comrie plays well in a 4-2 Sabres win and gets the ball rolling for this whole Florida trip.
I like your optimism, Gatesy, and I like 4-2. I'm going to flip the script a little bit. I'm going to say 5-2 Tampa Bay victory. And here's my reasoning why. The Sabres, we've said the word streaky like 6 times already, and I'll say it again. The Sabres are a streaky team, and they just lost a game a couple days ago. They're not really a team that splits a lot, right? Like, you're not a team that wins Monday, loses Wednesday, wins Friday, loses Saturday, wins Sunday. They're a team that loses Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Then wins Saturday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. You might go 3-3 in 6 games or 4-2, but the 2 losses or 3 losses are coming back to back to back. So I'm going to predict a Sabres loss. I have a feeling this is going to be one of those games where maybe they play really well and we're actually impressed with their play, but maybe it's a bad penalty. Maybe you have to kill a 5-minute that the Lightning score twice on. I have a feeling that 5th goal is going to be an empty net goal, so it's not really a 5-2 win, but it will be a 5-2 win. And I just have a feeling the Sabres are going to drop another game in a row. But with that said, I don't know that we'll be all that disappointed in their play.
I hate to do this. I'm going to make everyone hate me. The Sabres are plus 195 on the money line here. They're an underdog. Not many people are expecting them to win. Yes, I got empty shelves in the back. Don't worry about it. What you have to worry about is this scrappy Sabres squad. They play their best when they're on the road with their back against the wall. And frankly, after they come off a bad game at home and expectations are the lowest, give me the Sabres tonight in overtime, 3-2 over the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't know why. I don't think there's any reason to believe in this here, but that's why the line surprises me so much. This is a Lightning team. Guys, this isn't like the Sabres on a 10-game win streak. This is the Tampa Bay Lightning. They win the Stanley Cup or they basically go all the way. 14-0-1 in their last 15, and the Sabres are only 2-1 to pull off this upset. Stinks out loud.
Yeah, it seems like one of those games. You're right, Maniac. When this team has the back against the wall and people doubt them, they surprise us. I think we've watched this team so many times, and they keep finding ways to surprise us one way or the other, and tonight seems no different.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how they respond, and especially having just to go to Florida. And it's telling, I think, that they didn't just let that game die in the 3rd period against the Maple Leafs. It's telling that they came out and scored 3 goals, and they didn't really make it a game, but they showed that they weren't giving up on the fight.
Jeff Skinner's celebration on the 5-3 was a legit celebration. It wasn't the,
right,
oh, that was a meaningless goal celebration.
Yeah, that was a hey, we're in this.
We're back.
Were they really in it?
No.
But I like the idea that they said, hey, you know what? We're in this. Look how easy it was, easy, a relative term, for us to get back in this game. I'm a fan of how that response was, and I'm wondering how they'll carry that into this game, being a little bit cold to start games as of late. It'll be interesting.
And regardless of how Eric Comrie starts out, folks, Sabres Twitter will be hot. We are just about 25 minutes away from puck drop. Again, Eric Comrie expected to be in net for the Sabres. Sabres taking on the Lightning is about 2-1 money line and dogs, but we're expecting for them to be a little catty on the road in Tampa Bay. Make sure you're shouting out and following all our guys, Gatesy35, V Cristiano 3, and me, Zach Sheldon, if you want. But if you don't need to, you don't need to. Don't worry about it. Make sure you're just doing it because this is the show, of course, where sometimes our signals do get crossed. Sometimes I get kicked out of the stream, signals crossed to the wazoo. But our swords always are. And of course, it's always about 3 words. Let's go Sabres.